The Flamacue is one of the fundamental rudimental ideas that we find in virtually all areas of rudimental drumming, and it also has plenty of drum kit applications as well. In this video, I'm going to explore the Flamacue from a conceptual and compositional level, as well as explore the technical aspects of performing it as well. You just heard at the beginning there the piece Jolting John by John Pratt. This is one of my favourite rudimental pieces. It's from the book 14 Modern Contest Solos, and it is a great example of how the Flamacue can be applied in a really ingenious and exciting way. So to begin with, what is the Flamacue? Well, the Flamacue is a rudiment comprising 5 notes, which are most often conceived as 4 16th notes and an 8th note. The actual note value doesn't really matter, but we have 4 quicker notes and then a longer note at the end with a gap after it. So of the 5 strokes, we have a flam at the beginning and the end, but crucially an accent on the 2nd stroke. Now we'll talk about the accented 5th stroke in a moment, but for now we want to conceive of the 5 strokes of the Flamacue as running flam, accent, tap, tap, flam. So very slowly, it looks and sounds like this. Now you can hear there, all of those strokes were very low, even the flams, to allow that accent on the 2nd stroke to cut through. Now, if I take this on the opposite hand, I simply reverse the sticking and I begin with a left hand flam this time. So if I play 2 of these back to back, conceived as 16th notes with an 8th note on the end, it comprises 3 quarter notes, 1 E and 2 and 3 E and. So it's a 3-beat phrase that we can practice alternating from hand to hand. Looks and sounds like this. You can start to hear, as we pick up the tempo, this really nice lilting cadence starts to come in through that syncopated accent. We're very used in rudimental drumming to have the accent on the downbeat, on the beat itself, strongly emphasized. So by moving that accent to the 2nd stroke, it's really nice. And this is something we'll come back to shortly. Now, I talked about the potential to accent the 5th stroke. This I would consider as essentially an optional variation. There are numerous instances where the Flamacue is listed with an accented 5th stroke, and there are numerous instances where it is shown without an accented 5th stroke. Indeed, in John Pratt's Jolting John here, it occurs in both ways, which we shall see. Now, to play this, because this is a flam-based rudiment, we need to be strictly concerned with our stick heights. Stick height directly equates to the quality of the flam we produce. So if you have an issue with your flam, perhaps they are devolving into unisons or they're just a bit sloppy, chances are this is going to come down to your stick heights. So, despite this being an unaccented flam, we want a difference in stick heights. You can see here my right stick is slightly higher than the left. Even though this is unaccented, we can't achieve a flam if our sticks are playing from the same height. So I begin from this position here. This is all in the wrist with a little bit of finger engagement. Both sticks are going to play downwards. I'm going to do a right-handed unaccented flam, immediately followed by a left-hand accent. So watch as I do the flam. My left hand has played an upstroke, so it's ready to do the accent on the following. I then have a right-left tap, 2 unaccented strokes, and then a right flam again to end the phrase. Notice again that is unaccented. Now the flam itself functionally serves to emphasize the strokes anyway, so even though they are unaccented dynamically, they are still going to be emphasized points of the bar. This is the nature of applying a flam anyway. But we don't want to add to that unduly so unless we are specifically intending to accent those flams. So we're keeping our stick heights very close together but distinctly apart in terms of the flam itself. Because I don't want to play, this is not 2 accents, this is just an accent on the 2nd stroke. But nevertheless, for those flams to be well articulated, it comes back to those stick heights. Now I'm using a lot of finger control here to keep the sticks in the palm of my hands to stop them coming too high and rebounding. Because there are 3 taps here, 3 very low strokes, perhaps 4, depending on what we do with the accent at the end, I need those sticks to be low. If I choose to accent the fifth stroke, we only have 3 taps, but nevertheless, I still need to be in control of the stick heights. So the fingers are doing a lot of the work behind the scenes, pulling that stick into my hands to stop them coming too loudly, coming too high. Now, in the instance that we do accent the fifth stroke, we actually develop a dotted 8th note pattern. This comes out of the accents themselves, and it's a really nice touch. So this time I will play the Flamacue accenting both the second and the fifth strokes. As I say, I would consider this something of a variation. Typically, by default, I wouldn't expect to see that fifth stroke accented, but that doesn't really matter. The crucial part, the defining feature of this Flamacue, is the rhythm in which it occurs, the 4/16 notes by an 8th note, followed by an 8th note usually, the flam on the first and the fifth, and especially the accent on the second stroke. So let's run through one of the passages here from Jolting John, which puts this to really nice use. Let me play it from just the bottom of the first page. We get this really nice lilting cadence across the accent patterns that is absolutely reminiscent and indicative of this Flamacue figure. Now, not all of those figures in there, I know you can't see the music, but not all of those figures were Flamacues. We've got what we might consider a dragacue, which is a Flamacue but with a drag at the beginning rather than a flam. But to me, it's essentially the same application of an idea. This Flamacue is characterized by the accent on the second stroke, and notice how it's a 5-stroke phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We get this really nice, almost polyrhythmic effect where the accents are syncopated away from their expected position on the beat and into this syncopated second 16th note. So we can see this in a lot of typical rudimental drumming generally. We can take something like a flam paradiddle and practice it next to a Flamacue to see how this changes the rhythm, to see how this changes the phrase. So if I play flamadiddle, flamadiddle, Flamacue, we get something like this. Now, even that simple three-beat phrase is very indicative of the rudimental style. It's very indicative of a marching style. And the flamadiddle, the flammed paradiddle, and the Flamacue that we are using here are working together to either place the accent on the beat or to syncopate the accent away from the beat. So we're thinking about the functional application now of these rudiments. Now, we can improvise in this manner really, really comfortably by simply playing combinations of flammed paradiddles and Flamacues. There need be no particular pattern or pre-definition here. We can simply improvise with it, and our only consideration is, do we want the accent to be on the beat, or do we want the accent to be syncopated to the second 16th note of the beat? You can hear there very distinctly when the Flamacue is coming in, because it's the only time when that accent is not on the beat. Whether I'm doing paradiddles, flam paradiddles, the 5-stroke roll into these flammed accents or flam taps, the accent is very strongly on the beat. 1, 2, blah, 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 diddle, da, 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 da. As soon as we use the Flamacue, we break away from that. Ba, ba, ga, da, 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 blah, da, 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 blah, da, 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 ga, da, da, da. So we're using the Flamacue functionally as a rhythmic tool. We're thinking less about the flams and more about the accent it provides, because if we link into, let's say we use a 5-stroke roll to transition into a Flamacue, I'm not going to play the flam at the beginning. just the flam at the end. But because I have got the accent on the second stroke and I finish with a flam on the fifth stroke, I would still call this a Flamacue. We've just adapted it because we're coming in from a 5-stroke roll. We simply can't play the flam. We're just going to drop the flam, but we're still conceiving it as a Flamacue. And this is what's happening here in Jolting John. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On bar 7 of an 8th note section, we have what I just talked about here, what we might call a dragacue. We've got the drag variation of the Flamacue followed by an actual Flamacue. So running from that first bar, we see Flamacues in every single bar, whether they are the drag variation or the flam variation. They all serve to take the emphasis away from the beat. Let me try that one more time. I'll take it a touch slower so you can hear what I'm talking about. So in that example there, all of the musical content is derived from essentially the application of the Flamacue. And the characteristic point from that, the defining feature of that, is that the accent has been displaced, has been syncopated. So when you're practicing these, when you're thinking about these, we always want to be bearing the function in mind. What is the purpose of the Flamacue? Why has it been used here instead of, say, a Rudimental? What is the defining feature of a Rudimental instead of a Flamacue? And in this instance, it's going to come down to the accent on that second stroke more than anything else. So let's take it from the end at the bottom of the first page here. We'll hear the same pattern again. It's no coincidence that that 8-bar section ends by resolving the accent back onto the beat, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7 bars that come before it feature the main accent syncopated away from the beat. So listen to how the tension is increased by keeping that accent off the beat before it's finally resolved and released in the 8th bar. By having that triplet figure into the second beat, the accent on the downbeat, all of that tension is released and that musical figure is resolved. So we've kind of subverted all of that marching expectation. We're tensing, and then it releases as we resolve the phrase. So this is a really nice but simple application of that Flamacue, and is a great way to exemplify the use of the Flamacue itself. So whether you are exploring this rudiment on the snare drum throughout rudimental repertoire or on the drum kit, I would encourage you to think about its function. How can we apply it to its best rhythmic effect? The flams there at the beginning and the end serve to add a subtle emphasis and a bit of color, but it is that accented second stroke that is really the defining feature of this Flamacue, as we can see by its application in the repertoire. So I hope this has given you something to think about. I really love rudimental playing, as I'm sure you can tell, and this is one of my favorite rudiments and one of my favorite pieces, and it is absolutely defined by the Flamacue. So I hope this has given you some ideas, some things to think about, both in terms of the way we practice it and in the way it's applied, whether you apply that on the drum kit or the snare drum. Thanks very much for watching. Good luck in your own practice. See you next time.